This video features the best picks and best bans for each map and game mode aside of ranked. If you guys are lost in ranked, I really recommend watching to the end of this video so you guys will have full intel on how to easily push to masters. Alright guys, the first game mode and map we're going to be talking about is going to be Gem Grab Double Swoosh. Now some of the best first picks that you guys can use, as you guys can see, is going to be like Jesse, Amber, and Jean. Now with the bushes on the side, you really want to be running these kind of brawlers, especially like Jean that can scout the bushes with his vision gear. Especially even with a brawler like Amber, she can use her oil to light up the bushes and just set everybody on fire. Breaking that cover is going to be very clutch for the mid brawlers to stay alive and make sure they don't get ambushed by other lane brawlers. Now some of the good last picks for Double Swoosh are going to be brawlers like Buster, Sandy, Daryl. As you guys can see, like those kind of brawlers are more tanky and they have shorter attack ranges, and those are the brawlers you guys kind of want to be using on top of the lanes. If you guys are facing brawlers like Amber and Jean, yeah, you're pretty much screwed because they're going to have the scouting, or if you're facing brawlers that have abilities to break bushes, then yeah, those late picks are going to be in trouble. But that is why they are late picks. If you don't have those kind of counters, those are the brawlers that you want to be running. Now if you guys don't want to run those brawlers, there are some other good ones that you can use like Tara, Squeak, Max, and Stu. Those are just in general very safe picks for Double Swoosh, and they're kind of meta as well on like especially very bushy maps. So if you guys want to use them, you can as well. But okay, the next Gem Grab map we're going to be talking about is going to be Hard Rock Mine. Now for Hard Rock Mine, you can use brawlers like Rico, Gus, and Penny. They're going to be very good, strong first pick brawlers that don't really have a lot of counters. Especially with how good Rico can be on the lane, he's going to be a very solid pick there. Gus and Penny in the mid is going to be very clutch. Gus with the shield, Penny with the mortar and hypercharge. I mean, it's a very disgusting comp. And then some of the good later picks that you guys can use are going to be kind of similar to Double Swoosh. You can see like Buster, Daryl, Sandy. And again, you want to be using these brawlers more specifically on the lanes where they won't really have a lot of counters, and you want to be picking them if a lot of the best first pick brawlers aren't really picked. If for some reason the enemies just draft forward, you probably have a good chance if you run these good later picks, since the likelihood of you getting countered is probably less likely. And there's some other good brawlers you can use, even like Jean in the mid, 8-bit in the mid, Amber, Ruffs, Pearl on the lanes will be solid as well. Ruffs would be a kind of good alternative in case Rico's banned, because he can also bounce your shots off the walls, or he has a super to support his teammates. 8-bit in the mid is going to be very good as well. He has the damage booster and he can support his teammates. It's going to be a very clutch brawler for you guys. Now at Hard Rock Mine, make sure you guys have the lane brawlers going into the enemy team's bushes and try to just stay there as long as they can. As long as they can stay there and pressure the enemy team, then the brawler in the mid can easily get the gems and should help you guys win more games. But okay, the next gem grab map we're going to be talking about is going to be Undermine. For Undermine, there's a lot of bushes on the sides, so some good mid brawlers you guys want to be picking first are going to be like Piper, Gus, Belle. The reason why you want to be picking the mid brawlers first most of the time, especially when you guys are going to see the same pattern throughout the entire video, is because you guys want to be locking down those mid brawlers, because there's not really a whole ton of wide variety of mids you can use. There's going to be a lot of good lane brawlers that you can use more than mid, so that's why you want to save them more for like the mid or to late picks. Now speaking of those later picks, some good later picks you can use in Undermine are going to be, the same thing like Buster, Daryl, Nita, Sandy. Especially with all those bushes, you want to be having a lot of health and you have that shorter attack range, so you can hopefully defeat the other brawlers that you're going to be laning in those bushes. With having brawlers like Buster, he can pull the brawlers that are in the mid with this slow-mo replay gadget that can come in clutch, or even having Daryl, who's a tank and like a rolling assassin, he can use his supers, rush onto like the gem carrier and get them down. Now some other good brawlers that you can use are going to be kind of the same as you guys have been seeing, like Tara, Squeak, Otis, Stu. Those good other picks can be good for like either good mid picks or late picks, depending on like if the brawlers are banned or whatever it may be. It kind of just depends on what the draft is, but those are just good safe picks that you can run pretty much no matter what the comp is. But okay, the last gem grab map we're going to be talking about is going to be Last Stop. For Last Stop is very wide open with bushes on the sides yet again, so you guys can probably see already you're going to want to run like Piper, Gus, Byron. A lot of these gem grab maps, you guys can notice, besides Double Swoosh, are going to be very opened up in the mid, so you guys want to be using those long range brawlers yet again. Having Piper, she can escape with their super, Gus has a super with the shield, and Byron in the mid can actually support the brawlers on the lanes, which is very clutch. And then some good last or later picks you guys can use Last Stop are going to be the same, like Daryl, Amber, Nita, Buster, even Ash. Ash rising in the meta, he wasn't in my last ranked tier list video, but it's because of how good he is now with his hypercharge. Ash and Buster on the lanes are actually going to be pretty clutch. They don't have like the shortest attack range, but they have a lot of health. They can use their kits and versatility to just burst on anybody that's on the lanes. And then of course some other good picks you can run are like Otis, Tara, Pearl, Rico, Max. These brawlers are going to be very solid, whether if you run them in the mid or to like rush down or the squishy brawlers, or you even want to use them on the lanes, they can be very good as well. With Last Stop, you guys want to be making sure you are maintaining control of the bushes, because it's so important that the mid is not really stressed out too much. If you guys have control of the lanes, you guys should be good to go, and the mid should easily be able to get the gems, and yeah, just make it a lot easier for your team. But okay, moving on from gem grab, let's go ahead and talk about Heist Bridge Too Far. Now at Bridge Too Far, you have the 3 separate lanes, so you gotta be running one brawler lane, and some good first picks you guys gotta use that are very strong, like Angelo, Chuck, Melody. Especially with a brawler like Chuck, you know, he is like the king of heists. If he's not banned, you gotta be picking him, and that goes for like all these first picks as well, obviously. Then yet again, it's good that you have like a brawler like Angelo who can go over the water. I mean, it's gonna be very good. He has that versatility that can cross over lane and mid and just alternate back and forth. Now, some of the good later picks that you can use are going to be like Daryl, Amber, and Lola. Daryl's going to be good. He can roll across the water. Amber and Lola have a lot of DPS, so if you are facing brawlers that, you know, have like longer ranges, you can like roll onto them or just be able to out DPS, especially a brawler like Chuck. Now, if you guys don't have those brawlers or those brawlers are banned, you can also use even like Eve, Max, 8-Bit, Piper. All of these other long range brawlers are going to be very solid as well, especially with how good Eve is right now because of her hypercharge. I mean, if she's not banned, you got to be picking her. 8-Bit could be a little bit of a riskier pick because he is slow, but if you have that damage booster and you have your extra credits gadget, man, you can shred down that safe in no time. But okay, moving on to the next heist map, we got Hot Potato. Same thing for Hot Potato, you want to be using brawlers like Chuck, Nita, and Melody. Hot Potato is a little bit tricky. You have the bushes down the mid, and then you, of course, you have the lanes, but you also want to be running Chuck just straight through the mid. I mean, it's probably one of the best things you can do. Mostly because if you run those poles straight back into the bushes, you can hide out there, hide behind the walls, and regain health before you go back in. Now, some of the good later picks you can use are going to be tanks, so like BB, Frank, and Daryl. Of course, if the enemies are not running wall breakers like Colt, then a lot of these other tanks and aggro brawlers are going to really thrive with using those bushes and walls to get closer to the safe. Especially with the unbreakable walls, all these tanks and like high health brawlers can just maneuver around it, stay safe, and just go in when the enemies have like no health. And then finally, some other safe picks you can go are going to be like Pearl, Rico, Amber. So in heist, right, you want to be kind of destroying the safe as quickly as possible, but also playing defense if your team is really struggling, right? A lot of these other good brawlers have a ton of good DPS and can burst on a lot of tanks and assassins that you guys might be seeing in a draft setting. But okay, the next heist map we're going to be talking about is going to be Heist Kaboom Canyon. Same old, if these brawlers aren't banned, you can run brawlers like Colette, Chuck, Cole, and Melody. Now, Kaboom Canyon, it is very tricky, don't get me wrong. You have the water, you have the walls in mid, you have the bushes in mid as well. It's a very intricate map. So if you have a lot of these like good, safe first pick brawlers, then you will probably have a good chance at winning the match just in general. Now, for some of the later picks, now this is where it gets interesting, right? You can run brawlers like Daryl, Carl, or even Bonnie. I wouldn't really recommend Carl and Bonnie too much unless you're not really facing a lot of like aggro brawlers. Mostly because if you're facing brawlers like Piper and Brock, you can really run Bonnie and just jump on top of them and just get them down. Even using Bonnie's jump to jump onto the safe and deal a lot of damage is clutch. Or even if you're running Carl, you can use his gadgets, whether if you're running Flying Hook or Heat Ejector. They both serve good purposes, and his super is going to be very good to shredding down the heist safe. Now, some other good brawlers you can run that are very good for DPS, same thing like Amber, Lola, and even Eve. Now, the good thing, like I said earlier with this map, is that there's water, so if you want to run brawlers like Eve, I know I didn't say Juju, but you can run Juju and even Angelo as well. The thing about those brawlers, you can just run straight over the water, you don't have to run around it, and it'll save you guys a lot of time. It'll help you guys to maintain control of mid, running back if you need to retreat and defend, or if you want to just go aggro and help your team push up the map. So running a lot of those water brawlers, whether they're first, late, or just, you know, mid brawlers in general, you can't go wrong with them at all. And then our last heist map we're going to be talking about is going to be Safe Zone. Same thing for Safe Zone. As you guys can see, we're going to be running brawlers like Colette, Colt, Chuck, Melody. Now, Safe Zone can be very spawn trappy, so you guys need to really watch out here. Running brawlers like Chuck, Colette, Melody, of course, are going to be very safe. They can do a lot of damage, and if you have these brawlers, most of the time you can probably win in a base race. Now, some of the good later picks, as you guys can see, you can definitely run brawlers like Eve, Daryl, and Carl. These brawlers can go over the water, whether if it's with a super, a gadget, or just like Eve's trait, for example. There's going to be very good safe picks that you guys can run, as well as the later picks, especially you guys want to be using them late, because these brawlers are not really the strongest as first picks, and they could get countered a little bit easier. And then, of course, some of the other good brawlers you can use are going to be like 8-Bit, Angelo, Brock, and Belle. Of course, good long-range sharpshooter brawlers, since you don't have to cross over the water. If you can just shoot over with your long range, if you have a super or whatever it may be, that'll just help you guys just also stay in mid, keep control of mid, but also deal damage onto the safe at the same time. But okay, moving on from heist, the next game mode we're going to be talking about is going to be Hot Zone, and the first map is going to be Dueling Beetles. For Dueling Beetles, you can't go wrong with running throwers like Juju, Barley, and the Twins. Running throwers, especially with that unbreakable walls, I mean, they're going to be extremely toxic, so if these brawlers aren't banned, you got to be picking throwers. Juju is going to be very strong, one of the best brawlers in the game, of course. And of course, the Twins and Barley, they're still very good for area control, so yeah, you can't go wrong with running throwers in general. Now, some of the good later picks you can run are going to be like Squeak, Sprout, and Frank. Squeak is going to be a little bit tricky because he doesn't really have a good reload speed, but he can be good for area control. Sprout can be a really underrated thrower as a late pick if you guys can block off walls, use your super, and just totally shut the enemies out. The only reason why Sprout can be kind of risky and why you want to run him later is because he can struggle against like tanks and assassins, so you gotta watch out. And Frank, you guys might be like, why Frank? But Frank can destroy the walls and just kind of open up the map and just kind of pressure the enemies back with his high health. Now some other good brawlers you can use, of course, are going to be like Lou, Gray, or even Amber. Lou, of course, being one of the best brawlers in the game at the moment, and of course one of the best brawlers for hot zone especially. You can't go wrong running Lou with his hypercharge. It's incredibly broken. Speaking of hypercharge, like Gray with his hypercharge is going to be very disgusting for hot zone, even especially inside of Dueling Beetles as well. Having 2 sets of teleporters is going to be very disgusting. Get your team up the map, heal them up, and give them the shield. I mean, it's just so good. Alright guys, the next hot zone map we're going to be talking about is going to be Open Business. Now some good open business brawlers. It is a little bit more open up compared to Dueling Beetles, so you can run brawlers like Juju, Stu, or even Penny. There are still walls, so you could run throwers. That's why I recommend Juju, but brawlers like Stu are going to really dominate, especially if you have low ping. You can multi-dash. I mean, he's going to be very good to wall break as well. And especially with Penny, it could be a little risky though. If the enemies do run counter picks that can break walls, then the mortar will be more exposed. Unless you put it behind the unbreakable wall, then you're good. Now some of the good later picks, you can definitely run brawlers like Squeak, Amber, and Sandy. Sandy is still going to be good for area control. Same thing with Amber with her oil. She can light people on fire and lock down parts of the map. And then of course Squeak, like I said, he's going to have to be a late pick because he does get countered quite well. But if you're not really facing a lot of aggros, tanks, and assassins, then Squeak could be okay. Now some other good late picks you can run, definitely run brawlers like Barley, Barry, and Poco. The reason why I really recommend Barry and Poco as good other picks is because you can't ever go wrong with also running healers, especially with how good Barry is with his hypercharge, even Poco with his hypercharge as well. Like, they just make them even better support brawlers. It'll make it a lot easier for your team to stay alive and just make it a lot more frustrating for the enemy team to take you down. Alright guys, the next hot zone map we're going to be talking about is going to be Parallel Plays. Now I personally really don't like this map, but you can't go wrong of course with running throwers like Juju, Larry, Laurie, and Barley. With unbreakable walls that are literally in the middle of the hot zone, you can just maneuver your way around and really take down pretty much anybody. Throwers are not going to really have a whole ton of counters unless you face brawlers like Miko, Mortis, or other like assassins that you might see. Now speaking of those later picks, like you guys can see here, you got Lily, Hank, or even Daryl. Lily could be interesting, like you have your super, you have the trait to charge your super, so she could be good to counter throwers that might be hiding behind the walls. Especially with a brawler like Hank, this might be the only time where Hank could be somewhat viable inside of ranked. Especially with him being able to just totally blow up his bubble, he can hit people behind walls and do a lot of damage. It can come in very clutch. Of course with Daryl as well, he can roll across the water, get to the hot zone faster, or just roll on top of the enemies and to get them down. Now some other decent picks you can use, definitely run like Lou, Nita, and Stu. Even though I don't really like parallel plays, there are a lot of brawlers that you can actually run, and it's a very funny time when you see how the draft kind of plays out. Mostly because you will probably see people running brawlers like Hank or even Shade, brawlers that can hit through walls, or you might even see brawlers that can walk over water like Juju or even like Eve or even Shade, for example. Alright, for the last hot zone map, we're going to be talking about hot zone Ring of Fire. Now Ring of Fire, I know a lot of people really don't like this map, so you guys want to be running brawlers like Juju, Piper, and Gus. They're going to be very safe. Juju of course being one of the best picks to run on this map because of all the water that are on the sides, right? You can really just stand on top of the water, slow the enemies down, and it'll make it a lot easier for the lane or the other mids to help you get them down. Having longer range brawlers in the mid, since it's pretty opened up, it's going to be a very good safe pick for you guys to run. Now some of the good later picks you can use are going to be more of like the shorter range brawlers, so like Tara for the bushes, Sandy for bushes as well, or even Lou. You could also run Surge. I wouldn't really recommend it because it's going to be a little bit of a slower start for you guys, especially inside of hot zone. I would really recommend Lou, especially if he's not banned. You guys got to be playing Lou. I mean, he's going to be so good, especially on these singular hot zone maps. Now some of the good other picks you can use, especially like Amber, Stu, and Lola. These brawlers can actually do a lot of damage, especially with Amber locking down choke points. Lola with their clone can pretty much double her DPS, and Stu just dashing all over the place, being one of the best brawlers in the entire game with his hypercharge. I mean, yeah, you can't go wrong with running a lot of these brawlers as well. Now Ring of Fire, I really recommend at least one of your teammates goes and runs up the left side, gets into the enemy team's bushes, and it'll just relieve a lot of pressure off of your teammates that are trying to stay and keep control of mid. If you guys have brawlers that can walk over water like Juju, it'll really help you guys as well, just maintain control of the water, and it'll really prevent brawlers from hiding behind walls as well. Okay guys, the next game mode we're going to be talking about is going to be Knockout, and the first map is going to be Flaring Phoenix. Now for Flaring Phoenix, you gotta use brawlers like the Twins, Juju, or even Gene. Gene with his scouting, I personally love using him. He's got the long range main attack, he's got the chip damage, he's got the vision gear, and it'll really help your team see those bushes. Running throwers like Juju and the Twins, I mean, you have those unbreakable walls, especially in the later game. It can come in very clutch for taking the enemies down, no problem. Now some of the good later picks that can be pretty solid are going to be brawlers like Buster, Gray, or even Sprout. Buster with his slow-mo replay gadget, he can maneuver around the walls, charge up his super, push towards the enemies, and just really frustrate them. Gray with his teleporters and his walking cane gadget can pull people in, teleport onto them, and just get them down pretty easily. And now Sprout could be kind of interesting, kind of like with Dueling Beetles. If you can get your super, you're not really facing a lot of aggro tanks and assassins. You can wall off choke points, wall off the map, and easily gain control so you and your teammates can get up the map. Now some of the other good brawlers you can use, definitely run brawlers like Max, Penny, and Belle. Max can be a very good brawler when you're facing other long-range squishy brawlers. You can just use Max to just rush straight towards the enemies, do a lot of damage, and just burst them down. Brawlers like Penny and Belle are going to be kind of good long-range brawlers, not the greatest, so that's why, I really recommended a lot of the good long-range brawlers as like first picks. But just in general, in knockout, the general good rule of thumb is make sure you guys have that 3v2 advantage. You want to make sure that you have 3 of your teammates alive, 2 of the enemies, so you guys can work a pinch, and it's just going to make it a lot easier trying to just push the enemies back into the smoke. Alright guys, the next knockout map we're going to be talking about is going to be Belle's Rock. Now for Belle's Rock, I personally don't really like this map too much, but you definitely have to run throwers like the twins. Running a brawler like Larry and Laurie, they're going to be a good safe pick that you can use, can maintain a lot of control, especially with the unbreakable walls. RT is going to be another good brawler because he does have the ability to shut down comps like Daryl Kit. And then of course you can't go wrong with running Rico in the mid. As long as the enemies pray that you don't run counter picks and destroy the mid walls, then you should be good to just bounce the shots off the walls and keep the enemies back. Now some good later pick brawlers you guys can use are definitely going to be brawlers like Gray, Sprout, or even Mr. P. Gray is going to be kind of like what I said for Flaring Phoenix. You could just use your gadget to pull people in with Walking Cane, and then use your super if you need to like teleport onto the enemies if they're like hiding behind walls, for example. Again, Sprout can be good if you're not facing like other good throwers or like assassins that can get you down. You can easily just wall off the map, just push up and just maintain control, lobbing your attacks over the walls and just bouncing it off of everywhere. Now Mr. P could be interesting, but this is why he has to be a later pick. Mr. P can easily get curb stomped if you pick him first and then they like counter pick a Mortis, then you're cooked, right? But the reason why Mr. P is good is because he has the porters that can scout bushes, that can tank shots against brawlers like Stu or longer range brawlers, or if he can bounce his briefcases over the walls. I mean, Mr. P could be a very, very good late pick here. Now some of the other good picks that you can also use, definitely run brawlers like Juju, Piper, and Penny. Juju, another good thrower. You can even run her as a first pick if she's not banned. That could be solid as well. Piper is going to be a good longer range brawler. She has the ability to, jump away with her super. That could be pretty clutch. And of course with Penny, if you can manage to actually charge up her super, the mortar can come in clutch and act like that fourth brawler and just lob those mortar attacks and just maintain control of the map. Alright guys, the next knockout map we're going to be talking about is going to be Goldarm Gulch. Now for Goldarm Gulch, some good first picks you have to be using are going to be like Rico, Juju, and Piper. Rico is definitely one of the best lane brawlers you can use. You're going to be probably seeing a lot of tanks and assassins on this map, so use Rico on the lane, bounce the shots off into the bushes, and just make sure that the enemies can't sneak up onto you. Juju, with her ability to walk over water, and she's a thrower, she can hide behind the wall, she's going to be very good as well. Gus can be a pretty good mid with this super, and having the ability to give you or your teammates the shield can become a clutch to stay alive. Now some good late picks you can use are going to be like Gray, Carl, and Buster. Gray could be pretty good, same mode with the Walking Cane gadget, and super, it could be clutch to pull people in, super onto them, and get them down. Carl could be pretty decent. You can wall peek around the walls, keep the enemies away at a distance, but make sure that you are hitting your pickaxes off the wall so you can get it back faster. Finally, Buster, a slow-mo replay, he could definitely be good with like a Gene Max Buster comp. It could be pretty clutch as well. And then some of the later picks definitely run like Daryl, Gene, or even Max. Daryl could be a good assassin if you want to run like a Daryl Kit comp. It could come in pretty... Daryl could be a good tank, especially if you're going to run like a Daryl Kit comp. You could run Daryl there. Gene could be pretty good with his long range. He has the super that can pull people in. You can burst them down with the help of your teammates. Max can be a good support brawler. You can get your super, speed up your teammates, and you guys can push the enemies back inside a knockout. And then finally, the last knockout map we're going to be talking about is going to be Out in the Open. Out in the Open, you must be running longer range brawlers, kind of like Gene, Piper, or even Byron. Gene, same thing. You have the super that can pull people in. You have the vision gear that can scout those bushes, especially those bushes in the mid. You want to make sure that the enemies can't sneak up onto you. Running longer range brawlers like Piper and Byron, keeping the enemies back. You just want to make sure that you aren't going down, keeping the enemies far away from you, so that's why you want to be running these brawlers first. Now some of the good later picks you can use, they can do some good damage, like running brawlers like Buster, Daryl, or even Leon. Now I wouldn't really recommend Leon a whole ton. I know I trash him a lot because the 8-year-olds can't really play him that well. He's not really the greatest brawler, so I would recommend brawlers like Buster and Daryl even more though. Buster can be good with his super and his slow-mo replay gadget to yank people in, or use the shield so you can get closer to the enemies. Daryl could be a good late pick if you have a kit already on your team or whatever it may be. I don't know what it is with me and running Daryl Kit. If you want to run Daryl Kit, that's up to you. And then of course some of the other good brawlers you can use. Definitely I love running brawlers like Pearl, RT, or even Juju here. Pearl, you've seen her in the world finals, she did really good. I know that was a couple of months ago, don't get me wrong, okay, but Pearl can still be a very good brawler, especially with the max heat bar. She can do a lot of damage, and she has her super that helps herself stay alive. Max can be good to speed up her teammates. She can do the chip damage from a distance and just speed up her teammates, get closer to the enemies. Now I know for Juju it's kind of risky, you know, it's a more open up map, but she does have the ability to walk over water, and if you guys are pinched in the back on the map, at least you will have Juju on your team to kind of lob over the walls and push the enemies back. But okay, moving on from Knockout, let's go and talk about Bounty, and the first Bounty map is going to be Canal Grande. Now, Canal Grande is a very tricky map, especially with all the bushes, all the unbreakable walls, all the water, but obviously some good brawlers are going to be throwers, right? So Larry, Juju, they're going to really thrive here. And then, of course, you have all the water, so you're going to want to run brawlers like Angelo and Juju too. And then, of course, you got to take account for the bushes, so you run brawlers like RT and even Jean. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, but all those brawlers kind of take care of a certain characteristic about the map, right? You have good first picks to take care of the bushes, the water, and even the unbreakable walls. Now, some good late picks that you can run to counter those types of brawlers, I would recommend aggro. So same thing as you've been seeing this whole time inside a Knockout, like Kenji and Taro and Buster, especially if the enemies are running more squishy brawlers and they can't do a lot of good burst damage inside of those bushes. Then running brawlers like Buster, where you can yank them in, or Taro, you can roll across the water even to extend your roll, then you can really benefit by trying to just make a sneak attack onto them. And then finally, some other good picks you can run to, like Eve is going to be solid. She can walk over water just like Angelo and Juju, but also brawlers like Surge and Nita, because they can be great counters to those types of tanks that you might see as late picks. Surge can jump over the water, Nita will have her bear to tank for herself and also scout bushes. And even like Clancy and Tara, they can do a lot of good burst damage and maintain control of mid pretty easily. Now, moving into the next bounty map, we're going to be talking about Hideout. Now, for Hideout, there are no unbreakable walls, so you could run longer range brawlers that can break open the walls, kind of like Piper. Piper is a very good first pick. She has the long range, she got the super to escape, or even to break open the map to her team's advantage. So if you do have Piper, you could run other good early picks such as Byron, Gus, Penny, that can really benefit from that long range. Now, some good late picks, you want to run Assassins or just good aggros like Leon or even Carl or even Darrow too. Now, some late picks that might confuse some people are going to be like Sprout, Tick, and Mr. P, right? Well, Mr. P can be good to really just irritate those long range brawlers because he does have the Porter, he does have the scouting that can tank for him. And then you could run Sprout and Tick if the enemies are not running any wall breakers, because they can really benefit, especially as throwers, to have control and have, you know, cover with those walls. And then just some good general picks, you could run Gray, RT, Mandy, you know, all those brawlers that have long range or have multi projectiles, because the map, if it does get opened up, you do want to have at least some brawlers that have decent range. But the meta here in Hideout, I wouldn't recommend running throwers too much unless it's a late pick. You want to be running longer range brawlers in case the map does get opened up, just so you have that range advantage. Moving into the next bounty map, we're going to be talking about Shooting Star. Now, Shooting Star, I really love this map, but the unbreakable walls in mid are so annoying. Now, some good early picks, you can run Angelo. He can benefit from walking on the water inside of mid. He can be a good mid brawler here. Of course, with Juju, she can just camp behind that wall and walk over the water. I mean, she's pretty much set there. But other than that, you want to run some longer range first picks like Piper, Jean, Gus, and Byron. They're all going to be very solid too. Now, as far as the late picks like Mr. P, Tick, throwers in general, or even Bonnie can be really solid too. Bonnie with her super can jump far away, land on top of those sharpshooters, and get them down. Mr. P can actually be not bad too if there's like no aggro as a first pick on the other team. Mr. P will get steamrolled by brawlers like Darrow and Kenji, so that's the only reason why I would watch out for him. But the reason why Mr. P is good is he can throw his briefcases over those unbreakable walls and hit any thrower or brawler that's trying to camp behind it. And then finally, some other good general picks like Sprout can be pretty disgusting here, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Penny can benefit from getting her mortar, placing it behind the unbreakable walls or just walls in general. And then Max can be a good support brawler. She can really just run to the enemy's faces, especially if they're running brawlers like Piper. And then of course she has her super that can speed up her whole team and just go completely aggro inside a bounty. Now, the last bounty map we're gonna be talking about, I know a lot of people hate this map and I personally don't like it too much, but it's Snake Prairie. Now, the thing about Snake Prairie is that there's so much bushes and you want to maintain control of it, right? So good early picks, if they're not banned, you know, Jean, Tara, Bo especially, they have good scouting capabilities and you want to be having them as first picks if they're not banned already. But even if not, like Buzz also can be good for scouting. Clancy and Griff are going to be very good early picks as well. They can do a ton of burst damage from close up if they end up running like tanks or assassins inside of those bushes. Now, speaking of those kind of tanks and assassins, good late picks, you know, you can have like an RT or a Doug, Rosa, or Buster. Now, you do want to be running those brawlers if the enemies are not running brawlers like Clancy Clancy, and Griff that can easily burst you down, right? Now, I know Doug is very interesting, but a match that I really remember specifically from the World Finals was Totem beating Rival in the, was it semifinals, quarterfinals, whatever it was, and they were playing Doug inside of Snake Prairie, and it was very mind-boggling. But I mean, if you see why, like, he's a good support, he can deal the damage, he's got his super, so he can be pretty annoying here as a last pick. And then finally, some other picks you could run. You can run Janet, her star power, she can scout all those bushes for you. You can run Sandy because with root sands, I mean, you can cover a huge part of the map and just gain a lot of pressure that way. And I know a lot of people are probably questioning the Piper pick, right? But with Piper, if you can get your super, you can easily break open the map and escape as well against those aggro brawlers. Granted, it is very risky, and unless you're a very good skilled Piper, then I would not recommend running Piper and just run an easy brawler like Shelly. Alright, finally, moving into the last game mode, we're going to be talking about Brawl Ball, and the first Brawl Ball map is going to be Pinball Dreams. Now, the thing about Pinball Dreams is there's so much walls, even though they're not unbreakable, and there's a lot of bushes as well, and it makes it very irritating. Now, Rico, you want to be using him, even though he could get countered by enemies that can break open the walls. I mean, him bouncing his shots is very, very good here. And then, of course, having a brawler like Larry Laurie, you can't go wrong with running a thrower because all those walls, obviously, right? And then Surge is very disgusting. He can counter a lot of good aggros. It'll prevent enemies from picking tanks or assassins as late picks, and he can jump over the walls with his super. Now, some good late picks, if the enemies are not running like a lot of those good early picks, or even if they are, like a lot of these brawlers can counter them, like Frank to break open walls, Daryl to roll onto the enemies, Buster can pull people in. It's pretty good. I mean, for late picks, especially inside of Brawl Ball, like, you want to be running a lot of tanks and assassins. The reason why you don't want to run tanks and assassins as first picks is because people can easily counter pick them, and there's a lot of good anti-tank brawlers in this meta. So as you guys can see, as we get later into all these Brawl Ball maps, you're going to see a lot of tanks are going to be good late picks, as you know, I just explained why, and that's why, you know, they're going to be late picks and not first picks. But anyway, back on topic, some other good picks you can run in general, like Tara. Griff can break open walls, he can be good too. Clancy, like I said, he's going to do a lot of damage against those close range brawlers. And Juju, you know, you can run another thrower if the enemies are not running wall breakers. Now, the next map we're going to be talking about is going to be Sneaky Fields. Now, here's an exception, okay? You know, you can run tanks here on Sneaky Fields because, you know, you do have all those bushes. And this is why you're going to see brawlers like Daryl, Tara, Clancy, brawlers that can really benefit from hiding inside the bushes. I know they're not really tanks, but brawlers in general that can just benefit from the bushes are going to thrive here in Sneaky Fields. Now, obviously, if you see those kind of brawlers being played first pick on Sneaky Fields, then you want to be running brawlers that can break open those bushes, like a Frank, for example, or even running a Sandy with root sands, like he can use that star power to scout the bushes and prevent the enemies from healing up. Nita can be pretty good as well. If you see the enemies are running first pick tanks inside of those bushes, you can use Nita, and Nita's going to be a great counter to a lot of those tanks inside of the meta. And then just some other decent brawlers, you know, you could run Gale. Gale's going to be good with his Twister Gadget, his super, his hypercharge. You can run Otis, he can be very good with his super, and now his hypercharge, he can mute the enemies, deal a lot of damage, and you know, he's a pretty good underrated brawler right now. And another one I'll just talk about a little bit is going to be Amber. Amber can be used, she has a Dancing Flames gadget, even though it's been fixed, but Dancing Flames is still going to be good. She can use her super to burn down all the bushes, and Amber in general is fairly easy to play. But okay, the next map we're going to be talking about is going to be Triple Dribble. Now, good early picks for Triple Dribble, you can run like Daryl, you can run Juju, Surge as well, just brawlers, because there's a lot of walls, but it's also kind of open. It's a very weird map, I'm not going to lie to you guys. So just very strong meta brawlers, just pick them, they're going to be safe early picks here. And as some good late picks, Mortis can actually be pretty underrated here, even though I wouldn't recommend it to everybody because everybody has had that terrible Mortis random, and yeah, I wouldn't really recommend putting him if you're not good with him. But you know, you can run brawlers like Otis, Tara, Frank, Stu. If you have low ping, then you can be not bad. And then some other picks, you know, you can run Chester, Gale, Nita. I mean, a lot of brawlers, or even throwers too, like Dinah and Barley can really thrive as well. But the thing about like Chester, Clancy, Nita, Gale, as you notice, they're all like strong anti-tank brawlers. If you notice that the enemies are running like tanks first pick, like I said, like Daryl, Kenji, right, then you want to be picking brawlers that can counter them pretty well, like a Nita or a Gale. And then finally, to send it all home, our last map of the video is going to be Center Stage. Now, Center Stage with those lanes and there's a lot of bushes, you want to be running good first picks that are good lane brawlers. So brawlers that are going to thrive here are going to be like Amber, Clancy, Surge, Rico, Tara. They're going to be very good on the lanes here. Or even not really Surge that much, but the thing about Surge is that he's going to be good to counter a lot of the other good picks that you might see. Some of the other tanks that you might see are going to be like Buster, Frank, Kenji, which are going to be more late picks, but if the enemies are kind of stupid and they pick them first, and you want to run Surge to kind of counter those brawlers, right? But yeah, you want to run like Kenji, Frank, Buster if the enemies are running squishy brawlers that can't really scout the bushes too well, and you can easily steamroll them. And then just some other general first picks, like Squeaky is going to be good lane with his gadget as well. He can maintain control. And of course, some other good picks like Squeak is going to be good with his residue gadget. Chester can be good to deal the good burst damage, and Gale and Nita, they're going to be good anti-tank brawlers, so they're going to be safe picks no matter what inside of center stage. Well, anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that video, I highly recommend you guys go check out this video right here.